Hello and welcome to Stockholm, Sweden. We're here for a very special episode of EA Pwnd.
Yep, it's not the normal show this month. We're here at developers DICE and we're devoting the whole show to just one game.
This is the Pwnd Battlefield 3 Special. You've seen the trailer, witnessed the explosions, felt the earthquake, watched the buildings fall, but now it's time to get under the skin of Battlefield 3.
We're going to be interviewing the developers here in Stockholm and taking a peek at exclusive footage from the game.
Here's what's coming up.
We check under the hood of Battlefield 3 as we look at the brand new engine that drives the game, Frostbite 2, a car metaphor.
Then we revisit an old location from Battlefield 2, Karkand, and see how it looks in the latest game. I'll give you a quick hint, it looks better.
We lock and load with lead weapons designer Alan Kurtz, who's going to tell us all about Battlefield 3's physical warfare pack.
And we'll be taking a look at how Battlefield has evolved over the years. They don't do things by halves here at DICE. Whilst it's relatively easy to put out the same war game with a new lick of paint for each new sequel, when approaching making Battlefield 3, they decided to make a whole new game engine.
Now, utilising a combination of technology that even uses the animation system used in the FIFA games, that engine is called Frostbite 2.
What made you create a new animation system using the Frostbite 2 technology?
I started to look around, looked at stuff like Havoc animation and natural motion and things like that. Then I also got hold of this very cool movie that the guys developing FIFA were putting together. And it was a movie about responsiveness and about how a soccer player move on the soccer field. And for me, that was a really believable way of moving, and it had all the weight and it had all the intensity and all the believability of the characters that we would like to have in the game. And it turned out that they have an animation tool that it's called Ant. So we basically just call them on the phone or send them a mail and say, hey, we would like to use your tool. And they were just happy to share that with us.
Will users really notice the difference between Battlefield 2 and this one?
You should see a lot of physicality in there and a lot of interaction with the environment and also a lot of random things happen. I mean, because they do in real life, don't they?
What types of destruction does Frostbite 2 deliver?
Well, we have the micro destruction, as we call it, which is basically objects that are around the player, like cover and so on. It can blow holes through walls and stuff to open up new paths and move through environments that were previously locked off. And we also have the really big scale destruction, which is like facades and stuff that can crumble and fall over, as well as set piece destruction, which is more or less scripted big destruction events.
So will this type of destruction change the way people play shooters?
Absolutely. I mean, since your cover is destructible, you can't sort of really sit in one position for very long. As far as I know, this is the only game that uses this level of destruction.
We've improved on almost all aspects of the sound for Battlefield 3.
RPG, Mike 12!
We've not gone after a cinematic soundscape. We've worked towards a more documentary style. And so we've concentrated more on how the world responds to the sounds rather than the sounds themselves. It's the player that triggers it. The sound system is actually in control of the camera. So, when an explosion goes off, there's a camera shake, and that's triggered by the sound engine.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because then we can also trigger the rumble in the pad. So all of these things just improve the player feedback, and that's something Frostbite is really good at.
We can do really, really big landscapes, and we can also do really tight sort of interior fighting and so on. So we can actually have both in one level.
So what are some of those environments?
We have city environments, we have more rural landscape levels, we have interiors, we have all kinds of different types of environments. And that's really one of the big benefits with Frostbite 2 is it allows us this flexibility and to just do what we want to do. And it's really the contrast and the flexibility between driving a tank, playing as an infantry soldier, flying a jet that makes our game unique.
Frostbite 2 has helped us in two ways. For the artists and for the designers that work with engine, they do everything real time. And this is something we've never ever been able to do before. So now when you change stuff, you will see it on the fly. Frostbite 2 supports more or less unlimited light sources. We can place hundreds of lights in a room and it feels like you are actually there. For the gamers, big benefit here is that everything will be so much more realistic, it will look better than ever before, and the iteration speed is so quickly for the developers, so the gamers will get so much more quality experience.
Do you think this is the best looking Battlefield game?
By far. Absolutely, you haven't seen anything like it. This is awesome. You will be so impressed.
RPG, Mike 12!
It's recently been announced that the forthcoming Need for Speed The Run will also be using the Frostbite 2 engine.
But we're not here to talk about that today, we're here to talk about Battlefield. Now, those of you who've played Battlefield 2 would have spent many an hour killing or being killed in Karkand. Good times. And the good news is, you can go back there in Battlefield 3. Pay attention, it's an exclusive. The Back to Karkand expansion pack reimagined classic Battlefield maps Wake Island, Sharkey Peninsula, Gulf of Oman and Strike at Karkand. We caught up with Nicholas Fagrius, the pack's lead designer, and David Spinier, who designed the original maps, for a chat.
2 months ago we basically thought of how could we make a really cool experience for the core fans and the new fans, and it felt kind of natural to revisit the epic maps of BF2.
So you designed some of those maps.
I did Strike at Karkand and I did Sharkey Peninsula.
And why do you think people really liked Strike at Karkand? Apparently it's one of the top maps ever.
It has the infantry stuff. It's super intense. I can barely survive 5 seconds on it. But it also has the kind of the mix of vehicle in there as well. Also, I had a very specific kind of design idea for it when I designed it originally. And I think that part kind of came through.
And Nicholas, you've been applying the Frostbite 2 touch to Strike at Karkand. How's that been for you?
It allows us to do a lot of things. So it's dynamics and destruction and lighting and a whole bunch of stuff. I just want to make sure that the core gameplay is there so that fans can recognize, and when they jump in, it feels like they've been there and they recognize the scenery, and but still, the new bling attached to it.
In terms of destruction, how does that alter the way people might play the map?
You can, blow a hole in the wall if someone's hiding and no one is safe behind cover and so on. So that interesting, new gameplay dynamic will be in Karkand as well, the new one. So, and that's one of the challenges, to make sure that fits with the core gameplay and make sure it's fun. And
in terms of the vehicles, is it going to have the same vehicles that you put in there, or is it going to be different ones?
You're going to see some of the old vehicles from BF2 and refamiliarize yourself with them.
Do you think Frostbite 2 gives you more freedom in terms of being more creative with the Strike at Karkand map and the other 3 as well in the pack?
Yeah, it does. It's a really dynamic engine, and we can do tons of stuff. But again, we want to make sure that the core gameplay is still there. But then on top of that, we want to add all the new stuff that Frostbite offers.
And will there be different game modes in there as well?
You will be able to play Rush on Karkand, yes.
So ultimately for you guys, what do you think is more rewarding? Starting afresh and coming up with some new map designs, or maybe changing one that already exists, such as Strike at Karkand, and giving it a new lease of life?
Personally, and this is just me, I love creating new maps, but it's been really interesting, kind of rewarding to see these guys work on something I did. I think we got a new audience just releasing BC Bad Company 1 and Bad Company 2 for consoles. So I think it's a real opportunity for new players to experience these old maps.
So David, you're working on Battlefield 3. You've probably seen most of the multiplayer maps. Is there one you've seen already that you're thinking, that could be the next Strike at Karkand?
Every game we do will have a map that kind of stands out, that is more popular. And I think definitely we have a lot of interesting and promising looking maps for BF3, definitely. Kind of in the same vein with the infantry experience and the urban settings, so it looks very, very promising.
And you can get the Back to Karkand expansion pack at no extra charge when you pre-order Battlefield 3 before its release.
Weapons are fairly essential in a shooter like Battlefield 3. Understatement. So let's talk about guns, and where better to do that than at a firing range. I'm at the Target shooting range here in Stockholm to speak to Battlefield 3's lead weapon designer, Alan Kurtz. Lock and load.
I'm Alan Kurtz, lead weapon designer on Battlefield 3.
So, Alan, without weapons, there would be no Battlefield 3. So how do you decide what weapons get into the game?
We're going for a really kind of authentic feel with Battlefield 3. So the big thing that we're looking at is what guns are actually being used by armies. And obviously we have the Marines in Battlefield, so first thing we did was go and look for the Marine weapons. But we also want that little bit something extra special because fun is still really important in Battlefield. So we went ahead and we went and looked at other forces and said what sticks out, what looks cool, what looks unique, what fills a role that we don't have, and we went and we picked those guns and we brought those into Battlefield as well.
So once you've chosen the guns, how do you get that authenticity across to the player?
Obviously our players are using a controller or a mouse and keyboard, so our focus is really on let's get the guns that they look right, let's get the guns that they sound right, and then the feeling of the guns is really important for us as well. The gun needs to kick in your hands, you need to really feel like it's alive, and we can do a little bit of that with rumble and things like that, but really that comes through with the animation in the gun, so the gun moves right, and if you were to pick one of these guns up and use it yourself, you get that same feeling when you use the gun in our game.
Now that must take a lot of research. Do you go out and try them yourself?
Yeah, so we've been out with the Swedish Army, we've been on maneuvers with them, we also have some military advisors, they come in and they sit down with us and say, well, here's where we'd use this gun, and this is why you use this gun.
So what's your favourite weapon?
I actually like the G3. It's an assault rifle, it's got a 20-round mag, it's big ammo, but it kicks like a mule, so it's a lot of fun. You got to really learn to master the gun, and that's what I'm looking for in a game.
So, Alan, if Battlefield 3 is your first Battlefield game, what's the weapon of choice?
So I'd go with what the US Marines use. It's the M4 carbine. It doesn't kick real hard, it's pretty easy to control, not the biggest damage, but it lets you really get on your feet, understand the battlefield, and you can move on to bigger and better things from there.
Now, I've heard quite a lot about this physical warfare pack. Can you tell us anything about it?
Right, so we picked 4 items that we felt really kind of represented the physical battlefield. So we've got the Type 88, it's a machine gun, it's belt-fed, big clip, it's got a bipod. So it means I can set it down on a surface and I can just really own that area. And that's really important to us because that's a supported shooting idea is a really cool concept in Battlefield. Then we've got a classic Battlefield gun, the Dow 12. This is a shotgun, it was in BF2. And it's a 12 gauge, 12 rounds, big magazine, really great for clearing a room. And to go with that, we've also got a special kind of ammo for our Dow 12 called the flechette round. And the flechette round, it just tears through things. If you got thin wood or thin metal, even another player, it'll go straight through them. So at close range, you're going up against multiple people or you think you got somebody on the other side of a fence, you want the flechettes. Then the last thing we did is we really looked at said, Battlefield's about team play. And we really wanted an item that was going to take one of our classes and put it into a team play role that it doesn't traditionally afford. Yeah. So what we did is we looked and we said we can put a flash suppressor on one of our sniper rifles, the SKS. Yeah. And the SKS is kind of a mid-range gun. It lets that sniper get in close with his squad, be there with his squad, be a team player, and work with all of the other players on his team. It helps him stay stealthy in that close range, but it's also completely unique to this physical warfare package.
We're all really excited about how good Battlefield 3 looks, but it all started back in 2002 with Battlefield 1942.
Let's see how the game has changed as the years have rolled by.
Creative director Lars Gustafsson has been developing the Battlefield games for over 12 years. After showing me some original concept drawings for Battlefield 1942, he took some time out to talk about the defining moments in the evolution of Battlefield. So why choose 1942 as the first setting for the Battlefield games?
It was a mixture of the levels we looked at and kind of finding a good mix and match out of the different areas we chose. At that time it was mainly running and gunning. We promised a lot and most people said we wouldn't deliver, and happily, barely, we managed to get it out, and it was really new with 64 players and all these vehicles and everything.
So then you moved to the Vietnam setting.
We had been itching to do that setting, and it was made by our Canada studio and really managed to capture that, Vietnamish feeling from the movies. The main thinking with the game was that we all had played 1942, we loved it to doomsday, but there were things that when we went online, we couldn't really get the same feeling as when we had played in the studio. Mainly the team play, playing together, move together, and all of that. And I think that was the whole reasoning behind